Hello, everyone. Cecil Martin here.
Hey, this is Hunter Henry.
What's up, man? This is Max Crosby, part of Raider Nation.
Hey, this is Ross Tucker, former NFL offensive lineman.
Hey, it's Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks.
Hey, this is Jerry Judah, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, and you're listening to the Full10Yard NFL podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Full10Yards NFL podcast. I'm your host Sam Moores, and today this is our Week 15 recap. We've only got 3 more of these to go now after today. It's mental. The season's, well, we're in crunch time really, and yeah, there's only one place to start this recap, and that's Monday Night Football, where we saw the Drew Lock-led Seattle Seahawks upset the Philadelphia Eagles. Drew Lock hit Jackson Smith in Jigba for a 29-yard touchdown before Jalen Hurts threw a second fourth quarter interception to Julian Love, who sealed the game for Seattle right at the end, targeting AJ Brown. This was a really fun game for run game purists like me. 278 yards between the two teams on the ground. Most of those coming from Jalen Hurts, he had 89 yards rushing, and Kenneth Walker, who really is quite polarizing for Seattle. If they can get Kenneth Walker going, normally they win games. I think there's a mad stat where if they have 16 rushes or more with Kenneth Walker, then they more than likely, like 90% of the time, win the football game. So he had 19 last night, and they won. So it bucks that trend. Look, let's start with Philadelphia for me. That's what I want to talk about really. This Eagles team, they started off excellently, to be fair. Marching down relatively untouched for a touchdown on the opening drive of the game, but obviously that's the scripted stuff. And when the in-game adjustments came, the Eagles were they struggled. It was a struggle for them on offense the rest of the game, with Seattle probably hanging in there. They weren't the best team until probably the fourth quarter, but they were there and thereabouts the whole time. They and then finally took the lead of the game at the very end. Just the whole occasion last night was so weird because I was just watching it unfold between about midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning, and we saw all these journalists, whether it was Ari Mirov or Adam Schefter or Ian Rappaport, tweeting, normally Schefter because it was an ESPN game, but tweeting about the QB situation because we didn't know who was going to start for either team. Jalen Hurts had an illness over the weekend. It was unclear whether he would start in this game or not. In fact, Schefter reported on Monday morning that it was actually unlikely that he'd play, but he did suit up. And then Geno Smith, who he missed last week with a groin injury, and it looked like he would play maybe, but it was Drew Lock who took all the reps in practice all week. But Geno Smith, he arrived at Lumen Field last night. He was there, and he was active for the Seahawks as well. But they decided to wait announcing him the starter until literally Drew Lock appeared under center for Seattle after the Eagles scored a touchdown. Weird stuff, isn't it? Really weird stuff. Fair play to Drew Lock. He looked pretty good. He's actually impressed me both of these games, and I think there's a lot of criticism of Shane Waldron, the Seahawks offensive coordinator, but I have to say it. The last couple of years, whoever's pretty much lined up under centre for Seattle has looked comfortable, and that's behind a not great offensive line. Obviously, it's better now because you've got Abraham Lucas and Charles Cross back, but and they've just dealt to their superstar receivers, and Locke's been no different. He was, he made the throw to JSN to win the game last night. A really nice throw. It was actually a bit of an overthrow, but the adjustment from JSN to stretch out and reach for the touchdown, it was awesome to see. So Locke actually impressed me last night. And as for Jalen Hurts, I get he's been ill and he has a banged up left knee, but he's not exactly stepped up when the Eagles have needed him in the last 3 games. Obviously, they've lost all 3 of them, and they were 10-1. They're now 10-4. They're now the 5 seed in the NFC. Win this game, and they would have it would be a game and a bit over the Cowboys because they have obviously a better record than them, but also they'd have a better conference record. Now that's changed. they're in a really weird spot. I still think they're probably one of the best teams in the league, but it's just so hard to pick who's good because each team has had other than the Niners, but even the Niners had their 3-game losing streak. But each team has had a couple of games, or at least a game where you can point to them and saying, "Oh yeah, who have you beaten?" Or you really struggled in this game, or you struggle at home, you struggle away. There's something really weird about every single team this year, so it's so hard to pin down who's good, who's not, which is why I'm so excited for the playoffs, because literally I think anyone can beat anyone going into it, really. But yeah, I just don't trust the Eagles right now. But I may, when it comes to the wild card round, divisional round, they may completely blow out a team they're not supposed to beat or something like that. They may go on the road and beat Dallas, or they may go on the road and beat San Fran. So but it's obviously that I don't exactly trust them. I think I probably will pick those two teams to beat them, especially if they're both at home against the Eagles. This loss for them as well, this could be pivotal for them because obviously, as I said earlier, their in conference record now is worse than the Cowboys. The Cowboys now have the tiebreaker in that sense, and obviously they also have the NFC East tiebreaker as well because they remain a 2 seed and are currently winning the NFC East. The Cowboys have the harder schedule, but the Eagles are all over the place at the minute, so I don't know if they're going to win all 3 of their games coming up. They've lost 3 straight. They've changed the defensive coordinator this late in the season from Sean Desai to Matt Patricia. It was so weird seeing him on the sideline last night with his pencil above his ear, obviously the trademark Patricia pencil. I think it's just a weird spot. But I had a feeling before the game they'd lose, but I just picked them based on talent. I think it's just better talented than Seattle. But I was a little bit right. I thought it would be close, and it really was close. Obviously, the Seahawks ended up winning, so I'm sure Owen, who was on the podcast on Friday, obviously a Seattle fan, is very, very happy now. I've not spoken to him yet this morning, but I'm sure he's absolutely buzzing. As for Seattle, well, Pete Carroll now moves to 8-0 against the Eagles, which is really impressive, actually, to be fair, because they've been in 2 or 3 Super Bowl windows since he joined in 2010. Obviously, there was the Andy Reid window at the start, and then there was the Doug Peterson one, and obviously now there's Nick Sirianni one. So to be 8-0 against the Eagles in that time frame is quite impressive. Obviously, winning this game as well is huge. It puts them 7-7, and they're huge winners in the NFC wildcard race this weekend, because it looked unlikely they'd be in the playoffs. Had they lost this before the day, or at least even if the results went their way and they won, so they're big winners this weekend. But they're not in the playoff positions just yet. They're currently the 8 seed. But again, they have 3 very winnable games coming up, and Minnesota and the Rams have harder schedules coming up too. So 2 of those 3 teams will make it in. If I was to guess, I think it'd be the Rams and the Seahawks. Obviously, the Rams are probably the 6th seed because they have swept the Seahawks in division this year, so they will have the tiebreaker over them. But yeah, I picked Seattle to make the playoffs for sure. And yeah, Philly, just weird feeling around them, but I don't think their season's over by any means. I think they'll respond. But when they'll respond, and look like one of the best teams in the league again, I don't know. And actually, to be fair as well, they have played 6 of the hardest games in a row recently, so they went 3-3 in that stretch, obviously playing Dallas twice, playing the Niners, playing Seattle, playing the Dolphins, and playing the Chiefs. That's quite a really difficult 6-game stretch, so 6 or 7 game stretch I think it was. So fair play to them to getting through it. 3-3, but now it's when they will really kick on, and I think it's just the way they've lost those 3 games in a row is what worries me about the Eagles right now. But we'll move from one NFC East team to another. We'll go on to the Dallas Cowboys now, because they're still in the lead of the NFC East, but only just. Had they won this game, they would have been laughing. But the Bills reminded the AFC heavyweights that they're very much still alive by beating those Dallas Cowboys, the red hot Dallas Cowboys too, mainly through James Cook. Really, he was all over the Cowboys defense. They just couldn't stop him. He had 223 yards in total, 179 yards on the ground, and 2 touchdowns. Their defense held the league leaders in scoring. As well, and they obviously helped by their defensive touchdowns as well. Obviously, I think Miami have the most offensive points, but Cowboys led the league in scoring because of their defensive touchdowns too. They held the league leaders in scoring to just 10 points and 195 yards. So well done to Buffalo. They intercepted Dak Prescott once, and they forced him into mistakes, and we'll get into it in a bit. But they got to him as well. They sacked him 3 times in 10 pressures. The offensive line for the Cowboys was shaky, especially after Zach Martin left the game, which we'll get into in a minute as well. But yeah, as I feared on Friday, the Cowboys, they struggled in another big game, not at AT&T Stadium. Yeah, they put the numbers up last night on Monday Night Football. The sort of difference between Dak Prescott in Jerry World at home and Dak Prescott away, and it's quite a difference. Away from home, he's an average quarterback. Obviously, at home, he is by far MVP. Unfortunately, for the Cowboys, in a tough environment, they struggled again. They have another big game, in a very, very tough home field environment in Miami next week coming up as well. So it's not, this narrative about the Cowboys is not going to go away unless they win one of these games. And I don't know if they beat Miami, it might have to come in the playoffs. You never know. For them, unfortunately, they look like the same old Cowboys right now. 7-0 at home, 3-4 on the road. That's quite a difference there. I thought this may be the Cowboys team that could do it and, even win important road playoff games, which they just haven't done. But I'm just not as convinced now because they've got absolutely walloped by the Bills. Losing to the Bills, in Orchard Park, that's fine. Everyone does that. But the way they lost, the way they were absolutely dominated from start to finish by James Cook, is a worrying sign for me. Neither quarterback was excellent in this game. It wasn't really a passing game, but Adam was the most influential one, even though Dak had more passing yards. He made the plays to sort of put them up when needed as well. And he got the game ball, which I thought was weird. He wasn't the best player in this game at all. It was James Cook. So you can sort of his face tells it all. By the way, when McDermott gave him the game ball, was weird. But look, for me, James Cook was excellent. As for Dak, he didn't have the MVP game I was hoping for. In fact, he wasn't great at all. Only Trevor Siemian had a worse PFF grade this week. He had 4 turnover-worthy plays to the only 1 big-time throw. He was 30th in yards per attempt too, only 3.9 yards. So unfortunately for him, he's now no longer the favourite for MVP, which obviously after a performance like that in a big spot is quite quite justified, but that's the thing with the MVP race this year. No QB has had one of those games really. No one's really had a I'm me performance, or no one's really stood up a lot. Stood up very high above the rest of the league. It's just we'll get into it later. But for me, I'm not exactly comfortable with awarding this MVP to a QB because no QB stood out far and away as the best quarterback this season. It's not happened. No one's been dominant this year. I think either way, the way this year is going, whoever wins MVP, unless it's a skill position player, which I don't think it will be at this point, it's going to have an asterisk next to it, I think. But we'll get into that with Purdy later. Anyway, the Bills, they're now at 8-6. They have 3 winnable games coming up. And a third straight AFC East title isn't exactly impossible. It's simple. Win all 3 and they're in the playoffs. Win all 3 and Miami lose to one of Dallas or Baltimore, they'll win the NFC East. So the AFC East. You're honestly, if you're a Buffalo fan, you're a Cowboys and Ravens fan the next 2 weeks, because if Miami win those 2 games, they clinch the AFC East even before they play Buffalo in Week 18. If they drop one of them, if they drop one of those games, then that Week 18 game in Miami is for the AFC's title. And I'm pretty sure if I was to bet now, either that or an AFC South game will be flexed out to the Sunday night game on NBC, if I was to guess right now, because those 2 races look like they're going to come down to the absolute wire. I think they'll definitely get in. Whether they have a home game or not, obviously by winning the division is a different story. If the now 10-4 Cowboys beat Miami next week, then Buffalo will be very confident. And then it's for Dallas, obviously that game for them is massive, because after this game they've got a big arrow down. On them, obviously they'll be falling down people's power rankings after this game, I think, and they're still searching for that signature away win that I felt they've been searching for ages, especially the last 2 years. And they're going to another team with a big home field advantage, the Heat, the Sun in Miami. And they're going to need Zach Martin, who obviously went out of this game with a quad injury. They're going to need him in that game against Miami because that Miami Dolphins interior defensive line is very good. Christian Wilkins and Zach Sealer have been two of the best. They've been playing at an all-pro level, both of them. They're both going to get big. Or Sealer's already got his contract extension. Christian Wilkins is going to get a contract extension or get a very, very big money move in free agency this year. So, both of them have been excellent, and they absolutely obliterated the centre of the Jets' offensive line on Sunday. So, the Cowboys needs that Martin because after he went out of the game right at the start, they struggled, and it might have been another reason why they went on to lose the game because they just got absolutely obliterated through the centre of that offensive line. Dallas have to win next week against Miami. Buffalo win out, they've got a very, very good chance at getting the playoffs. They're a Cowboys and Ravens fans the rest of the season. Okay, we'll go over to Sunday Night Football now, where the Ravens beat the Jaguars 23-7, and they remain the 1 seed with a win over fellow AFC playoff contender Jacksonville. Lamar Jackson looked great again, especially on the ground. He had 97 of the 251 rushing yards that controlled the clock for the Ravens in this one, and most of those yards came in the second half as well. I think they had 200 rushing yards in the second half. Isaiah Likely continued to step up into the Mark Andrews sized hole for the Ravens, too, with another 70 yards and a touchdown on 5 receptions. Backing up the last few weeks, they've been very, very good. But it's not the Ravens I want to talk about right away. It's the Jags, because they're going to be kicking themselves now. Because not only did they have opportunities to score plenty more points than 7, and they quite frankly could have won this game, it also sounds like they may be without Trevor Lawrence next week. After the game, Doug Peterson said that he is now in concussion protocol after a big hit to the head in the fourth quarter. They now have lost 3 straight, and that sort of created a fun scenario for them in AFC South to end of the year, because after Houston and Indianapolis won this week, any of those 3 teams can still win it. They're all at 8-5. 8-5, 8-6, they're all 8-6. But yeah, the Jags, they really should have been leading at halftime. They were the better team in the first half, certainly. But Brandon McManus missed 2 field goals. Trevor Lawrence fumbled in Baltimore territory just outside the red zone. And they got the ball to the 5-yard line with 13 seconds left, run a play, but couldn't get the pass out of bounds. So they ran the clock down with no points scored, and they were down 10-0 at halftime. They could have been two scores up, at least 1 score up in the in the first half, and they didn't score a single point. And then from then, the Ravens went on and controlled the clock, scored 10 points to put Jacksonville away in the fourth quarter. They went on to win the game. I love both these defenses. Both played well, but one offense took advantage of their opportunity to score the game. One took advantage and control the clock. The other one didn't. I still don't trust Baltimore as a Super Bowl contender yet, but I think for me, they probably are the best team in the AFC right now, and I don't trust any team in the AFC right now, to be honest with you, just because every team's had their lows this season. It's going to be a very interesting race for that 1 seed and seeing who's going to get home for the advantage coming up. But they are starting to earn my trust right ahead of their big game on Christmas Day next week against the Niners. Obviously, the Monday night game on Christmas Day. That's going to be awesome. I can't wait to watch that. It's the AFC number 1 seed versus the NFC number 1 seed, the Super Bowl preview. A fun treat on Christmas Day as well, obviously. A nice end to Christmas Day. Obviously, it'll be probably Boxing Day morning here in the UK. But yeah, the schedule makers really have given us a good game there. And obviously, the Christmas ones you can't flex out either. So they really did. They really did predict the future well. Obviously, big game for both teams too there. And I'm excited to see their defense against the San Francisco offense as well. I think that's going to be an awesome battle, and we'll talk about that on Friday with the preview pod. But yeah, I'm so excited for that. Unfortunately for the Ravens, it looks like they're going to be without the impressive rookie running back Keaton Mitchell for that game, because he's probably out for the season with a torn ACL, suffered in this game, unfortunately. And then we'll finish with the Jags, because the division is still in their hands. They still lead the division, obviously the 4 seed right now as well in the AFC, and they've got 3 winnable games coming up. You'd like to think they're probably still favourites, but with uncertainty around Lawrence's availability, it may be down to CJ Beathard to beat the Bucks and keep the AFC South lead alive next week. We'll see what happens in the week. We'll update you with Lawrence on Friday, but really we won't know about him until Saturday afternoon, really, if he's going to play. As for injuries, they also lost Zay Jones in this one, adding to Christian Kirk's groin injury. Obviously, he's missing time as well. So, unfortunately for the Jags, they're quite banged up going into the rest of the season. So, honestly, if I was to guess who wins the division now, I'd probably say the Texans are the most informed team. Obviously, they can get Stroud back really quickly. They can get Nico Collins back really quickly, and I think I'll put them as favourites. But yeah, honestly, I don't know. We might see the Gardner Minshew-led Indianapolis Colts play a home playoff game. You never know, but I think it's gonna be a really fun race to watch the rest of the season. Right, we'll move over from the AFC to the NFC now, from the AFC South to the NFC South and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, because Baker Mayfield became the first opposing quarterback to ever post a perfect passer rating at Lambeau Field as the Bucs retained the lead of the NFC South with a win over the Green Bay Packers. Mayfield completed 22 of 28 passes for 381 yards and 4 touchdowns on Joe Barry's defense, on the way to become PFF's highest graded quarterback of the week, with 50% on dropbacks anyway. He wasn't exactly well protected either. He played excellently under pressure, which is huge for Baker because he, in Cleveland, that's what he struggled with. He doesn't normally play great under pressure. He's really revived his career this season, which I'm loving. I'm a huge Baker fan, and I think he's going to stay in Tampa next season with how good he's played this year. Chris Godwin did suit up for the Bucs too. He was touch and go coming into this one with a neck injury. He didn't practice all week, but wow, he had a day, catching 10 balls from Mayfield for 155 yards. What a day from him. And he completed. Mike Evans got involved in there as well as a few more receivers. It's a perfect day from Mayfield as well, just distributing the ball. And Rashad White looked really good as well for them as well. Right, on to Green Bay. Well, they're now at 6-8, and their playoff hopes are probably a lot slimmer now after this loss. They probably have to win out to get in the playoffs, I think, now. Maybe lose once more, and hope they can get in 8 and 9. But for them, the playoff hopes are probably quite slim now, and that's because of Joe Barry's defense. I mentioned it earlier; they've been horrific this last couple of weeks, especially in coverage. And they lost the Packers their second straight game. It was on the defense for the second straight game. First Tommy DeVito on Monday night, and then Baker Mayfield this Sunday. Their team coverage grade by PFF for this game was 29.3. The lowest number from a game by any team in the past 5 seasons. So I think that pretty much shows how bad the Packers were on defense in this game. And since that stat came out that Matt LaFleur was 16-0 in December, they're now 0-2 and are back playing really poor football again like they were at the start of the year. So they didn't lose this game with his offense. I thought they actually looked quite good on offense. I thought Jordan Love had some nice throws again. But that stat's probably more because of Aaron Rodgers than Matt LaFleur, I'd say. 1-2 without Aaron Rodgers in December is a bit different. They now sort of they're on the outside looking in. Unfortunately for them, but they have got winnable games coming up, so we'll see what happens with them. As for Tampa Bay, they now have won 3 straight and are one of the most informed teams in the league going into the final 3 weeks of the season, and they've got division games coming up as well. They've got some huge division games too. So for them, the NFC South is in their hands, and I think right now I'd probably pick them to do it as well. The Packers, on the other hand, are on the outside looking in, as I just said, and results haven't exactly gone their way either. They've got 3 huge conference games, 2 division games coming up as well. Win those games and they're in. Win both division games, they might be in as well. But hopefully for them, Jaden Reed's toe injury doesn't really keep him out for very long. But no, Tampa look great. Green Bay, unfortunately. They're another team that are trending down quite a bit after Sunday's results. Okay, we'll go back over to the AFC South now. All AFC South game between the Texans and the Titans, where Kaimi Fairbairn came up big in his return for Houston, kicking a 54-yard game-winning field goal in overtime as time expires. It was a huge win for them that was putting them closer towards the first postseason berth since 2019. And this was in the absence of CJ Stroud, Nico Collins, and Will Anderson too. The Texans looked to have won this game just before the field goal, actually, through a Devin Singletary 34-yard rushing touchdown, which is a really cool way to end it because they just fed Singletary the entire of that drive in overtime. It was just Singletary pass with Singletary, run with Singletary, he went in for a score, but it was brought back for a holding call with just 43 seconds left in overtime. The Case Keenum led Texans managed to get it done with that field goal from Fairbairn. Otherwise, it would have been a tie, our first tie of the year. But no, Fairbairn made the kick. Yeah, as I mentioned, they actually went for Case Keenum rather than Davis Mills as a replacement for Stroud, who obviously was out of a concussion. Yeah, Keenum wasn't great, but I think I get why they did it. Obviously, a veteran presence probably helped them late in the game, searching for a playoff berth as well. And he bounced back from his pick six at the start of the game as well. The Titans were up 13-3 at the half, but only scored 3 points in the rest of the game. And I'm actually quite surprised they dropped this game, but they just didn't look great in the second half at all. And yeah, Houston completely took away their run game. They made Derek Henry look useless, which is a really, really impressive feat. I thought the Titans defense played well, actually, and I thought Will Levis was impressive again, despite the box score. He didn't have a great box score, but he's really impressing me. But without the run game, they're not the same team in and around the red zone, especially. They just couldn't score points. They couldn't really even get to the red zone either. So, yeah, unfortunately for the Tennessee, they dropped this game, but look, the season's over. I think it's just about learning what Will Levis is and what you're going to have in future years. And as for Houston, now they not only have a good chance at a return to the playoffs, but they also have a chance at the division, of course. I mentioned it earlier. They've got 2 division games coming up as well, including the Colts in week 18, which could be for a division. You never know. So, it could be a fun team to watch. The Texans coming up, and they'll have quite a few either nationally televised or quite big chunks of the country given to Texans games the rest of the year. I think just because their games are each and every one of their games are crucial. Okay. We'll go back over to the NFC South now with the Falcons going into Carolina, but unfortunately dropping another game. In front of a really tiny crowd, the Carolina Panthers shot their division rival Atlanta Falcons, winning their second game of the season, with Eddie Pinheiro scoring the winning field goal as time expired. This game was played in the storm. Hardly anyone turned up, really. The crowd hasn't been released yet, but I'd be shocked if it's above 10,000, maybe even 5,000, which is mental. There's a chance that you could have got a bigger crowd in the National League South watching Yeovil Town than watching the Carolina Panthers this week, which is, this season, sorry, with Yeovil, but, which is just mental. It wasn't pretty at all, this game. Typical 9-7 rain game. Only added to the dysfunction of both teams as well, because both teams are very dysfunctional. And again, the fact that the Falcons have been in the playoffs with their in a playoff position with their offense this year is just horrific at times on how it's happened. The Panthers won this game through their defense, which just kind of impressed me lately, and not turning the ball over offensively, and also because of Bryce Young. The drive at the very end of the game from Bryce Young set up the field goal, and it was very nice too. A nice 2-minute drive from him, and it's a good bit of film to take into next year as well. It's the best he's looked all year, actually, in this game. The Falcons turned the ball over twice in the second half, which obviously helped keep the Panthers in this game. Desmond Ridder threw a red zone interception in the fourth quarter, and Bijan Robinson had a fumble before that as well. And that's only some of their horrific numbers on offense. Bijan Robinson had 7 carries for 11 yards. Kyle Pitts 3 catches for 37 yards. Drake London 2 catches for 24 yards, and it was Johnny Smith who led the receivers again, which pretty much says it all. And then the only TD of the game came from Cordell Patterson, who also deserves more than his current usage. It's just, I've been saying it most of this year. I'd be shocked if Arthur Smith remains as head coach next week, let alone next year. For me, I think he looks like he may flip back to Heineke again next week too, just to save his job. But maybe potentially. But just get him gone, Atlanta. It's just not worked. The whole project you've had over the last 2-3 years just hasn't worked. So unfortunately for me, I'd just say get him gone. So he's had 3 years, and they've just been sat in the same spot again and again and again. No matter how many offensive players you add to this team, they're still the same Falcons they were when Matt Ryan was quarterback, unfortunately. As for we'll carry on with the Falcons first. Obviously, they've still got a chance at the division as well. But I doubt they've got a shot at the wild card anymore at 6-8. And they could be out of the division race even before the Week 18 game against New Orleans anyway. So, unfortunately for the Falcons, they have to win next week. If not, they're probably out of the playoffs. And Arthur Smith is probably fired if they lose next week. And then as for the Panthers, they'll be encouraged by what they saw from Bryce. Obviously, it was actually his best PFF grade of the year, and Bond was 10 points as well. He was excellent in this one, I thought. Obviously in the rain as well, which is for a small quarterback, small hands, that's quite a big deal for him. He was in the top 10 QBs this week too, so that's something to take into next year for him, which is awesome. So yeah, impressive stuff for the Panthers, and the Falcons really, unfortunately, are trending down too. Right, we'll go over to Cleveland, who unfortunately inflicted the Bears with another heartbreaking loss, with Joe Flacco and Amari Cooper leading the Browns to a comeback win. The Browns overcame a 2-score deficit to win this one and take the lead with 32 seconds to go. But the Bears almost snatched the win back on the final play of the game with a Hail Mary that was intercepted by D'Anthony Bell off of Darnell Mooney's hands and feet. It was really weird, a really weird play. It probably should have been caught by Mooney, and obviously that would have been given the Bears their 6th win of the year and maybe put them in with a chance at the playoffs, but unfortunately with this loss, they're out of it. The Browns' defense, a big factor in that. They were excellent in this one. They kept this team in it until late because their offense just wasn't moving in the first half, especially. Until the fourth quarter, really, Joe Flacco had 3 interceptions in this game, and it was much closer than it should have been. The Bears blew this game. They really did. Both of their touchdowns came after Flacco interceptions. A Terrell Edmonds pick 6, and Eddie Jackson almost had another one. He was brought down near the goal line, and that drive was finished off by Fields. They only scored 3 points with every other possession of the football they had, so they couldn't score points. Obviously, the Browns' defense really limited them, and they also dropped 2 touchdowns as well. So could have been a different story for the Bears, but unfortunately, they just didn't execute very well. They were up 17-7 at the start of the fourth quarter, but Fields was tripped them 4th and 1. Had they made it first down, they would have won the game, I think. But unfortunately, they turned the ball over there, and the game just changed after that, and all the momentum swung Cleveland's way. Flacco hit Marquise Goldwyn for a 57-yard grab on the very next play, which then set up a field goal to make it a 1-score game, before Amari Cooper went in for a TD on the next drive, and then they took the lead by hitting a field goal through Dustin Hopkins with 32 seconds to go, and the rest was history. Beat Houston next week, and Cleveland are at 10 wins, and basically they're in the playoffs. Their defense can really cause problems and maybe win a playoff game, I think, but I don't think they can go any further than that, unfortunately. They maybe get to the divisional round, but yeah, unfortunately, I think the injuries are sort of preventing this Browns team from being one of the best in the league. But I really hope they do get to play the Ravens in the playoffs, because that'd be fun. Obviously, Joe Flacco going into Baltimore for a playoff game. That'd be really fun to watch. And then, as for the Bears, they'll probably be scratching their heads after this one. I hope this isn't a game that helps them decide to move on from Justin Fields, because I really like Fields, and I wouldn't say it's his fault they lost this game. I think it's just more a really bad coach team, and obviously they're really low on talent too. And the Browns are quite a good coach team with a very tight defense. So that was probably the difference in this one, unfortunately for them. Right, so we'll go over to the AFC East, which is now very tasty, even with the Dolphins winning 30-0 over the Jets to move to 10-4 on the year. No Tyreek, no problem for Miami as Tua Tagovailoa and the Miami Dolphins got back to winning ways, sweeping the Jets. Tua completed passes to 8 different receivers and really impressed me with a banged up offensive line too, and missing obviously his best weapon in Tyreek Hill. Jalen Waddle saw an increase in targets and really stepped up actually with 8 goals for 142 yards and a touchdown. And that ball from Tua on a 60-yarder to Waddle for a touchdown was just absolutely perfect too. Awesome from him. Raheem Mostert scored his 19th and 20th touchdowns of the season, a Miami Dolphins record. And their defense, which actually let the team down in the loss to the Titans on Monday night last week, completely shut down the Jets offense, limiting them to 103 yards and only 4 yards in the first half. They forced 4 turnovers too, and they got to the quarterback, whoever it was, whether it was Zach Wilson or Trevor Siemian, 6 times too. And it's very important they won this too, because although they'll be kicking themselves because of how they lost on Monday Night Football, and had they won that game, they would have won the division on Sunday against the Jets. Now it's complicated. They've still got 70% chance of winning the division, but Buffalo aren't going away. The Jets defense couldn't really save the Jets in this one. The offense very bad, but for the Jets, just sticking with the AFC, obviously they're out of it. They're out of the playoffs too. I don't know what happens to quarterback the rest of this year of them, because obviously they both had Zach Wilson and Trevor Siemian in this game. Zach Wilson took a hit to the head early in the first half. He then got taken out at the end of the first half. And unfortunately, for them, Trevor Siemian came in and he turned the ball over and he wasn't great either. And because of that, now they've lost this. I'll be shocked if Aaron Rodgers plays this year, even though he's meant to be activated off IR this week by Wednesday. I don't think it happens, unfortunately, because there's no point in putting a band at Rodgers out there to play against a team that was literally playing for nothing. So play for a team that was literally playing for nothing. So yeah, that's unfortunately for them. But as of Miami, flipping back to them, they now obviously the chances of the division, they're still favourites, but they have to win against Dallas this week. They have to. They now go into the who have you beaten bowl of the Cowboys. Obviously both of those teams have faced a lot of criticism. Obviously they both got 10 wins. They're both 10-4, but they've not really beaten anyone big. This is huge for them because it's huge. Just if win this one, gives them all the confidence going into Baltimore. Win that one, then you basically secure the 1 seed and division going into that Buffalo game where you can just relax for that one going into the postseason. Lose one of these games, and then you're you're not only playing for the 1 seed in week 18, you're also playing for the division with Buffalo, which again just absolutely insane. Lose to the Cowboys, beat the Ravens. Then that's just you'll be the 1 seed. But you'll nationally you won't. Yeah, actually, that's assuming the Ravens lose to the Niners as well. But it's just any of like 4 teams could be the 1 seed in the AFC. Going into week 18, and obviously after it as well. It's just mental. It's just mental to think how close it's got. And Buffalo are going to be very, very scary to be honest with you. Obviously the Dolphins also, they're going to be in a big spot as well. If they're going to win games, now is the time. They're probably going to have 3 games nationally televised. Huge 3 weeks coming up for them, and hopefully Tyreek Hill's back for that obviously as well. 2,000 yards is still possible, but he's going to have a big game in one of those 3 games. Either way, I think he should be MVP because he's been the best player in the league this season. But if he gets 2,000 yards, obviously, then he will be. I think he will be MVP. But if he doesn't, unfortunately, I don't think he will be. But I think he should be. So, Miami obviously had to win this one, but they're probably kicking themselves that they've not got the division wrapped up, and they've now got 3 very tough games coming up. Right, we'll stick in the AFC East and we'll go to New England, who unfortunately lost to the Chiefs, but it did make it difficult for them, especially on defense. The Chiefs got back to winning ways at Foxborough. The Patriots started the game well. They actually would be close, and in this game throughout it. But a costly Bailey Zappi interception gave all the momentum back to the Chiefs, and they won by 2 scores in the end. Most of the time it was a 1-score game, but then 2 plays later, Clyde Edwards-Helaire caught a pass from Mahomes, his second pass and touchdown of the day, and that pretty much won the game for the Chiefs. They weren't impressive, but they got it done, and that's the main thing. They still have a shot at the 1 seed too, especially with how easy their schedule is compared to Miami and Baltimore's. But right now, they don't scare me heading into the postseason, which is weird with the Chiefs. Hopefully they get Isaiah Pacheco back quickly as well, because other than Mahomes, he's their real difference maker on offense. I like Rashee Rice, but obviously he's a rookie. I think Pacheco is their real difference maker on offense, so hopefully they can get him back quickly. And then as for the Patriots, I think they played really hard for Bill Belichick, of course, but especially the news that came out this week that Belichick will probably part ways with the Patriots after the season. I thought they looked better on offense too against a very good Chiefs defense, so that actually impressed me. But the reason they're in this place in the first place is because they drafted poorly. Unfortunately, this wasn't the Belichick versus Andrew Reid game we hoped for pre-season, but thank God it was flexed out on Monday Night Football, because that would have been a horrific Monday night game compared to the one we actually got. In Seattle last night. Okay, 3 more games to finish up. We'll start. All NFC-based games as well. We'll start with San Francisco, who sealed their 2nd straight NFC West title for win over the Cardinals. MV Purdy, he's back to being MVP favourite now after a 4-touchdown game, and it might be actually the best game I've seen him play. So fair play to Brock Purdy. His pocket presence was just excellent. It was awesome. He was under pressure a lot, and he didn't get sacked once. His movement was just, he was really fluid. I loved watching Purdy move in and out of the pocket in this one. And just to not get sacked once, the amount of pressure he faced was just impressive too. As I predicted on Friday, the Cardinals did come to play, and they kept this one competitive throughout. But their 2 turnovers were actually the difference in this one. The Niners scored off those 2 turnovers, and obviously one of them being a pick six to Charvarius Ward too. The Niners were absolutely outstanding though. Unless Dallas and Philly show me something otherwise, I think they're the Super Bowl favourites for sure. They're the best team in the league too, in my opinion. And in the AFC, I have no clue who gets there. So I'd probably say that for me, I think if I was to pick now, they win the Super Bowl. Of course, Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel were a factor again. Of course they were. They were wide open for a lot of it again, or they made huge plays. But give it to Brock Purdy, he was excellent in this game. I can't critique that performance. He's not been the best player in football. Best QB, yes. And that's a dilemma, isn't it, really, with the MVP? Because the last couple of winners, Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar, Tom Brady, they're the most recent winners of the award, and all of them were literally on another level compared to everybody else. Purdy's not been to that level this year. And that's the thing, really. It's just like, what happens with the MVP? Do you go to a skill player and position player? Obviously, McCaffrey and Tyreek Hill have missed games. Tyreek Hill have more, but those two players have been so impactfful to their teams. Obviously, if both of those players get the 1 seed as well, which is possible, if both of those teams get the 1 seed, then maybe you do give it to skill position players. But I like Purdy. I think he's a good quarterback. I think he's a serviceable quarterback. I think I'd have at least 10 QBs over him. And that's the thing, really. I think this year he may have been the best quarterback, but he's not been the most valuable player in football, and that's where I'm torn. It's just like, I don't know. I think there's been better players than him. He's not had a standout year like the other QBs, but he has been the best quarterback this year, and that's the problem, isn't it? It's so weird. That being said, I'm looking forward to seeing how he plays against the Ravens, and their number 1 ranked defense next week on Christmas Day. Of course, the Christmas Day Monday night game is going to be awesome to watch. It should be so fun. I just can't wait to watch that game, really. I just can't wait. And we'll see. Maybe he wins MVP with a great game against that Ravens number 1 ranked defense, or maybe McCaffrey steals it, or something happens. But either way, fair play to Brock Purdy, an awesome game for him. And that's why right now he is the best QB in football and will probably win MVP. Okay, we'll stay in the NFC West, and the Rams, who moved into playoff position with a win over the Commanders, and obviously the Packers lost to Tampa Bay as well. It wasn't quite the shootout I hoped it to be, but the Commanders did make it interesting at the end in a game that the Rams were firmly in control of from start to finish. They were up 3 scores at half time with Stafford throwing a 62-yard touchdown to a literal wide open Cooper Kupp. There was nobody within 20 yards of him. But after a fourth quarter interception, Sam Howell was pulled for Jacoby Brissett, who just gave the Commanders an instant boost. It was mental that they almost won this game. He combined with Terry McLaurin for a touchdown and a deep shot. And it was quickly a 1-score game just after the 2-minute warning, which is just mental to see that they were in a 3-score hole at one point in this game. Brissett came in, turned it around, and they ended up being PFF's highest graded QB. In a short time of the week as well. Obviously he didn't play 50% of the snaps, but total grade he was the highest graded QB of the week. Weird situation. Obviously, I don't really like it. I'd rather see essentially a rookie in Sam Howell learn these experiences, now and try and put his team back in the game. Ben Mundy's in a horrific situation, and you're at the playoffs anyway. I don't really get putting in Jacoby Brissett to try and give you a chance to win this game. I just don't get it. The Rams are a playoff team. You're not a playoff team. I don't really get what Ron Rivera's thinking there. He's already announced that Sam Howell will be starting against the Jets in New York next week after the game, which just makes it even weirder. Like, why pull him? I just don't get it. Especially while I think Howell is probably the future of that franchise right now. I think he, give him a good offensive line, I think he'll be a good quarterback, and that's the thing. He just gets absolutely blown up every single week. But onto the Rams. Cooper Kupp pretty much literally slapped the onside kick out of bounds, and he won the game for the Rams. And he literally was just like that, boom, and he slapped it out of bounds. And they obviously got the first time to ice the game. Send him into the playoff position. And if they do get the playoffs, I think Sean McVay is probably a serious contender for Coach of the Year. I think, if they do get the 6th seed, currently the 7th, they're probably likely to have a game in Detroit. Obviously that'd be fun. Stafford against Goff in a playoff game would be awesome. But they do have a pretty tough schedule coming up too, so I do hope they get there, but whether they do actually get there or not is another story. I'd much rather have the Rams and the Seahawks and the Vikings and the Packers in the playoffs, or the Vikings and the Saints in the playoffs, if I'm being honest, because the Rams and Seahawks are so good to watch, and they're well coached football teams that are playing, that they play good football and can probably beat anyone. They've just had down points at this season, in this season. Whereas I feel like the Saints or the Vikings will probably get blown out by a big team in the playoffs, unfortunately for them. And then we'll go on to the Saints. Obviously, they are they're alive after winning 2 straight. They've now moved back into the NFC South. With the win over the Giants, which is going to finish off this podcast, and obviously the Falcons losing as well. They're only out of the wild card places on a tiebreaker as well, so they're getting their wins at the right time. The offense was actually quite good in the second half, especially without Chris Olave, which is something they can take into the rest of the year. But how many times have I said this about the Saints? How many times have I said it this year that they look good on offense, and then they go and drop 6 points the next game? They're so inconsistent on offense. I feel sorry for Dennis Allen as well, because he's probably going to get fired for something that's not his fault. It's not his fault the offense isn't flowing. His defense is playing very, very well. It has done all season. So I just feel so sorry for him. But unfortunately, they're probably going to move on from everyone in that organisation. Him, Pete Carmichael, probably Darren Rizzi as well, maybe potentially. Maybe move on from all coordinators. Just move on from the Sean Payton era, because obviously all three of those guys were there with Sean Payton as well. But yeah, no, obviously Allen's defense is great again. 7 sacks, really got to Tommy DeVito. They also injured him. He went out of a big hit to the head. And the Giants weren't great at all after that, even though he did come back into the game. They were 2 of 16 on third down, and they didn't reach the red zone once either, which is just mental. And yeah, after he came back in, it didn't make any difference. They were shut out in the second half. And yeah, the Saints defense stepped up and gave them the win. But at least we saw Jamie Gillen kick a 40-yard field goal. Obviously, the Scottish Hammer, the Giants punter, after Randy Bullock made the first field goal, he got injured. So he stepped in for injured Randy Bullock, and he made a 40-yard field goal, which some kickers don't miss. Some kickers don't make. So for a British punter to make that kick was awesome to see on red zone on Sunday night. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the Giants, really. Obviously, the season's probably unfortunately over now. We'll see what they do next year. I don't think Dable goes, but they probably will want a new quarterback. GM-wise, might look to move on from their GM too, because his picks haven't been great compared to, Gettleman's picks, who actually probably all panned out quite good. Other than maybe Donald Jones. But yeah, I think Gettleman's actually probably looking at it now, thinking, well, look at me. Most of these good players on this team are because of me. Dexter Lawrence, Saquon Barkley, etc. So I think maybe he might have a weird feeling about that. But we'll see what happens to the Giants. And then as for the Saints, we saw Jimmy Graham catch another TD, his 3rd game in a row with one as well, and he's actually becoming a good red zone target for a team that before they signed him, they were really, really struggling in the red zone. He's been a good target for a team that has really struggled in the red zone. So hopefully we can see Jimmy Graham catch more touchdowns as the season comes to a close. They've got a tough schedule coming up. They've got the Red Hot Rams, followed by the 2 games that will decide the NFC South against the Bucs and the Falcons. So it's time to see who the Saints are. And that's a good note to finish the podcast on. That has been your Week 15 recap. I didn't bother going into the Saturday games because, again, they're like 4 days ago now. Obviously, you would have watched them by now. And I think the teams that were expected to win won those games as well. So there's nothing really too much to talk about in coming away from those. But fair play to the Lions coming away from a big statement win. They needed that win as well. Obviously the Colts look really good as well. So fair play to them. The Bengals are in a position to get into the playoffs too, which is really surprising. Obviously without Joe Burrow. And the Steelers. The Steelers were horrific. God. Yeah, Steelers were absolutely horrific on Saturday too. So didn't really want to rewatch that game, unfortunately. And that's a good note to end the podcast. I'm sneezing and coughing everywhere. So I will see you for our Week 16. A Week 16 preview on Friday. Again, awesome week, Christmas. Games on Thursday, Saturday and Sunday and Monday. So yeah, 4 days of games over the Christmas week, which would be awesome to see. But for now, I've been Sam Morse. This has been the Full 10 Yards NFL podcast, and we'll see you in Week 16.